Joao Pedro is experiencing somewhat of a resurgence at Chelsea under new manager Liam Rosenior. After a tumultuous start to his Premier League season, he now finds himself in all competitions with 13 goals and 5 assists with a whole hatful of games to go. There's been a lot of stories about Nicolas Jackson also in the rags recently, and although in truth the likelihood is Nicolas Jackson probably going to get sold. But it made me ponder, it got my light bulb flickering. How well is Joao Pedro doing compared to Nicolas Jackson, who a lot of Chelsea fans have been crying out for the entirety of this season? So today we're going to get into the stats and we're going to find out. We're going to take a look at Joao Pedro's Premier League season with Chelsea so far compared to Nicolas Jackson's last full season at Chelsea. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And like I said, today that means we're going to be comparing Joao Pedro and how he's getting on so far this season for Chelsea and Nicolas Jackson's last full season in a Chelsea shirt. So I've nipped over to SofaScore, I've got the stats for the prerequisite season, and let's just dive right into it. So we're going to have Nicolas Jackson on the left and Joao Pedro on the right. So we're just going to go through their general stats and their heat maps, and then we're going to get into the stats good and proper. So they are both 24 years at the time of writing. So Nicolas Jackson was 23 going on 24 last season whilst he was at Chelsea, and Joao Pedro is 24 now. Nicolas Jackson 186 centimetres and Joao Pedro 182. So Nicolas Jackson has a little bit of height on Joao Pedro. The current estimated worths, but I don't really put much stock in these, is 44 million euros for Jackson and 60 mil for Joao Pedro. Obviously they both played at Chelsea, and for this entire season, bearing in mind, so this is a big caveat, right? A big caveat with this is Nicolas Jackson, spoiler alert, made 30 appearances in the Premier League last season, and Joao Pedro has made 26. There are still a lot more Premier League appearances to go for Joao Pedro, so although that might seem excuse the stats a little bit, it is all going to make sense in context. So yeah, for that entire season, Nicolas Jackson got himself a 6.92 SofaScore rating, and Joao Pedro is already on a 7.07, but if Joao Pedro stinks the joint out for the rest of the season, obviously that could change. So looking at their heat maps, very, very similar in the grand scheme of things, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you look at Nicolas Jackson's heat map, even though he'd already played more games by that point in that season than Joao Pedro has now, Joao Pedro has definitely got more spots of deep red and places where he hangs around a lot, do you know what I mean? And ultimately, it just looks a little bit wider, doesn't it? So Joao Pedro is definitely spending more time getting deep, but he's also drifting out left and right, weirdly, a little bit more than Nicolas Jackson did. And the whole thing with Nicolas Jackson was Nicolas Jackson is a left winger turned striker, and he drifts out to the wing a lot. But when you actually look at the heat maps, it doesn't look like that, does it? So what this instantly tells you, Nicolas Jackson is more of a direct striker, I guess you'd argue, because he's spending more time in those middle channels. But Joao Pedro is spending a lot more time getting deep, drifting wide, and obviously linking with the play as well. The main thing you can see here is that Nicolas Jackson is spending more time in the penalty box than Joao Pedro is, but that might be changing recently. But that's obviously, you know, you can see Nicolas Jackson's definitely got more concentrated areas of red in the penalty box than Joao Pedro does. But overall, Joao Pedro is linking up play and getting more involved in general. But we basically already knew that. So let's get into the stats. So I don't know why it puts the matches played stat at the bottom of these first three, but as you can see, Nicolas Jackson played 30 matches in that Premier League season. Joao Pedro only currently made 26. So, and the thing is, you would have thought Joao Pedro is probably going to make more than 30 appearances in the Premier League this season, barring injury and issues, do you know what I mean? Touching my desk, which is made out of wood. And as for minutes per game, Nicolas Jackson playing 75 minutes per game to Joao Pedro 73. Joao Pedro definitely has been making more appearances off the bench in general than Nicolas Jackson did. Nicolas Jackson, though, this is part of the story, isn't it? Nicolas Jackson was our only striker for like the 2 seasons that we had him. Obviously, we've got Liam Delap and Mark Gue as well, so Joao Pedro did go through quite a stinky run of form earlier this season. But Nicolas Jackson just edges him out on minutes per game, and total minutes played, obviously that makes sense as well, with 2,238 minutes for the entirety of Nicolas Jackson's season, compared to Joao Pedro's 1,900 right now. This isn't anything to say who's doing better than who, but this is a context setter, right? So the context is, by the end of that season, Nicolas Jackson had played 30 games, and at this point in this season, Joao Pedro has already played 26. So we'll move into the actual stats, right? Goals, 10 apiece. So Joao Pedro has already matched Nicolas Jackson's goal tally in that entire last season, with 4 games to go until he meets the same amount of games that he played, but potentially another, 12 games in total to go for the rest of the season. So look, if Joao Pedro scores 1 more goal, he's beaten Nicolas Jackson, and you would have thought in 12 games, if he makes 12 appearances in the Premier League, Joao Pedro's probably going to get another goal, isn't he, based on how he is at the moment. The question really is, can he get to 20? Nah, he's not going to get to 20. But if he can get to 16, 17 goals like that, it'd be unbelievable. Really, really good Premier League season. The next one, really interesting, expected goals. So Now, Nicolas Jackson, 12.34 expected goals in that Premier League season. So he scored 10, he was expected to score in and around 12. Joao Pedro has already scored 10 goals, and his expected goals for this season is 8.89. So there's something really, really important in that. Nicolas Jackson's expected goals was higher, but he underperformed it, whereas Joao Pedro's expected goals is lower, but he's overperformed it. So that in itself harkens back, doesn't it, to the dark days of Nicolas Jackson missing sitter after sitter after sitter. But ultimately, this tells you, in a nutshell, that even in less games, Joao Pedro has been more clinical than Nicolas Jackson was. Goals per game, Nicolas Jackson 0.3 and Joao Pedro 0.4. So as I said, more clinical. Shots off target, 1 per game to 0.5 per Joao Pedro. I don't really see how a shot off target's like a positive stat. I don't really see how they've kind of circled Nicolas Jackson as winning in that one. But ultimately, again, it just tells you that when Joao Pedro is shooting, more often than not, it's on target. Shots on target, Nicolas Jackson 1.2 to Joao Pedro is 0.7. So Nicolas Jackson was having, I think he was just having more shots in general, to be honest, and more of them were on target. But as we know, he was also missing sitters quite often. Big chances missed, absolutely massive stat here. And bear in mind, there's only 4 matches to go until Joao Pedro matches Nicolas Jackson's games played for that season. Nicolas Jackson missed 19 big chances. 19. And Joao Pedro has only missed 7. Less than half, man. Less than half, literally. He is over 100% better at not missing big chances than Nicolas Jackson was. So already, that tells you that when he's on form, when he's fit and firing and feeling good, Joao Pedro is more clinical, he's probably going to get more goals, and his opportunities are of a higher quality in general. So we'll move on to the passing. Now, this is another one that is quite interesting because Nicolas Jackson was no slouch in this department either. Assists, Nicolas Jackson ended that season with 5 assists. 10 goals, 5 assists, not... Well, the 10 goals in the Prem wasn't really good enough, but 5 assists is good for a striker, do you know what I mean? Joao Pedro already has 4. He's actually got 5 assists in total this season, I think. But yeah, so yeah, okay, Nicolas Jackson was better, but again, if Joao Pedro gets 1 more assist and 1 more goal in the next 4 games, even though there's another 12 to play, then he's bettered both of those tallies for Nicolas Jackson. Assists per game, they're both 0.2. So Nicolas Jackson, like I say, man, not to take it away from him, he did offer more than just being a striker. Expected assists, oh god, that's hard to say. Expected assists from Nicolas Jackson, 1.92 for that season. Joao Pedro is only on 1.68 at the moment. Both, obviously, they are both outperforming that. Nicolas Jackson did really well with getting 5, and Joao Pedro has got 4. Big chances created, another interesting stat, but again, you know, with 4 more games to go, Nicolas Jackson ended the season on 6, and Joao Pedro has already got 5 so far. Long balls, 0.2. 66.7% accuracy, I assume that means. And Joao Pedro is beating him out with 52.6% at 0.4 long balls per game. And crosses, none from either party. So they're not really crossing in there. So what that tells you is Nicolas Jackson was no slouch in the passing department, but it wouldn't be crazy to think that Joao Pedro can meet, match, or better some of those stats before the season's out, because what we do know about Joao Pedro as well is he is a very creative player. So in general, those are the stats that you care about, aren't they? The goals, the assists, the big chances missed, the big chances created. And this already paints a picture that Joao Pedro is more of a quality over quantity guy than Nicolas Jackson. Nicolas Jackson was having more shots, but he was missing more chances. And at the end of the day, in less games, Joao Pedro has already matched that tally, do you know what I mean? And like I say, Joao Pedro has the benefit of having another 4 games to go until he matches Nicolas Jackson's game tally, but also potentially another 12 games in this Premier League proper. So we're going to move on to some of the other stuff now as well, and it's not as important, but ultimately we live in a world now where every attacker has to defend and every defender has to attack. Do you know what I mean? It's like long gone are the days where your defenders stay back, do your defending, your midfielders are purely there for transition, and your attackers stay up there and attack. We are looking at teams that are really athletic now, that are running up and down the pitch, and everyone's doing each other's roles. So we're going to look at some of the defending stats. Interceptions, Joao Pedro takes this one, 0.2 interceptions per game. Tackles, they both made 0.7 per game. Dribbled past, 0.2 for both as well. Clearances, quite an interesting one, 0.5 per game for Nicolas Jackson, 0.9 for Joao Pedro. So although it's minuscule, Joao Pedro is ultimately beating out Nicolas Jackson on the defending stats. And blocked shots, Nicolas Jackson never made one. Literally never blocked a shot in his life. Maybe not in his life, but at least not in that season. And Joao Pedro, 0.2 block shots per game, so not bad. Other, dribbles, ground duels, all this kind of stuff as well. This is all really interesting stuff. And as you can see already just by the highlight, Joao Pedro is definitely taking it in most of these stats as well. Successful dribbles per game, 0.6 for Nicolas Jackson and 1 for Joao Pedro, which is interesting because you would have thought the dribbling would have been one of Nicolas Jackson's particular skills, being that he was a left winger before he kind of transitioned into striker from Villarreal. So again, great stuff from Joao Pedro there. Ground duels won, 2.3 for Nicolas Jackson to 3.1 from Joao Pedro, so that's quite a significant improvement. Aerial duels won. This one's fascinating because, as we mentioned at the start, Nicolas Jackson had a little bit more height than Joao Pedro did. 0.7 aerial duels per game won by Nicolas Jackson and 2 per game won by Joao Pedro. And Joao Pedro scored a couple of headers as well, hasn't he? It's not something we saw a lot from Nicolas Jackson. Possession lost is an interesting one. I think if we look back at the heat maps, we can probably attribute these stats to that. Possession lost, Nicolas Jackson 8 times. I assume that's per game. And Joao Pedro 10.3. But Joao Pedro is spending a lot more time getting back and playing deeper. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Nicolas Jackson's obviously was, you know, spending more time like in the penalty box and stuff compared to getting back and getting involved in the build-up. Fouls, interesting one, 1.2 from Nicolas Jackson per game and only 1 from Joao Pedro, so he's a little bit more on top of his, you know, the dark side of the game. Was fouled, Nicolas Jackson once per game, Joao Pedro 1.5 times per game, so Joao Pedro is also making more of a nuisance of himself as well. And then we get into the disciplinary stuff with cards. Nicolas Jackson got 7 yellow cards in that season, and Joao Pedro's only got 3 so far. Now, could Joao Pedro get 4 yellow cards in the next 4 games? I mean, I guess it's possible. Could he get 4 yellow cards in the next 12 games? I guess that's possible too. Yellow to red cards, none from both of them. 1 red card from Nicolas Jackson, which we all remember very well, don't we, from the from the Newcastle game towards the end of the season. And no red cards for Joao Pedro in the Premier League, but I do know that he got 1 in the Champions League earlier against Benfica, I think it was. He came in right towards the end of the game with a high boot or something, wasn't it? So that's it, man. That's it. Like, what you would have to argue, Joao Pedro, regardless of attacking statistics and metrics and goals and assists and stuff, Joao Pedro looks like to be more of a complete player. Nicolas Jackson had a really good relationship with Cole Palmer and definitely offered something really important to the team. But at the same time, Joao Pedro seems to be, like I say, more of a complete player, and that is going to be, you know, really more useful because we can get Cole Palmer forward more. If Esteval drifts inside from the right to take up that up front spot, you know, he's more likely to be able to dovetail and move. And Nicolas Jackson seemed a little bit more of a one-trick pony compared to Joao Pedro, but that's disingenuous because Nicolas Jackson was a reasonably versatile player as well. So that's it, guys. That's it. That is the statistics looked into, broken down. I would love to know what you guys think. At the end of the day, like I say, I'm making this purely out of curiosity. Like, how much better is Joao Pedro than Nicolas Jackson? It's not night and day, truth be told, at the moment. Now, the thing is, if Joao Pedro carries on his recent form, it could be. Do you know what I mean? Is if Joao Pedro gets 17 goals or something like that by the end of the season, like I say, if he gets a goal every other game, he'll finish on 16 goals and maybe could get 17 if he gets the odd brace here and there. So Nicolas Jackson was a good player for us. Like I say, I do just expect him to be sold. I actually mentioned it in yesterday's video. I would be interested to see if there's any option to maybe try Nicolas Jackson out on the left wing, because I'd probably rather see him there than Garnacho at the moment. And obviously he's already got like a pre-existing relationship with the likes of Cole Palmer and Pedro Neto and stuff, do you know what I mean? So maybe there's something in that, but probably not ultimately. If he really wants to be a striker and he really wants to be a front man and you know, the guy that's banging in the goals, then he'll probably find a team that will take him so he can go and do that. Nice one, guys. Let me know what you think. Are we happy with Joao Pedro? Like I say, he did go through a really stinky patch of form earlier this season, and in that season, to be fair to Nicolas Jackson as well, he did spend a couple of months out injured. I think one of the interesting things, and I've talked with a couple of my mates about this, Nicolas Jackson had 0 competition for 2 years, do you know what I mean? So I still think the decision to let him go this season was a bit wild anyway. But if rumours are to be believed, it's starting to look like that Enzo Maresca in particular was the reason that Nicolas Jackson didn't want to come back. So, you know, apparently per the Daily Mail, Nicolas Jackson is keeping his options open, but apparently per Fabrizio Romano, chances are he's just going to get sold. So either way, I think we've got a good, able replacement with Joao Pedro, who looks like he can go on to greater heights. Now, Nicolas Jackson had a better first season. I think he got 17 goals in his first season overall. I would have thought, and Joao Pedro is already on 13 goals in all competitions. So he's already matched his Prem tally, but in all competitions, if Joao Pedro scores another 4 goals and gets 1 more assist, then he's matched Nicolas Jackson. And we're talking about another like 20 odd games to go, do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of opportunity for Joao Pedro to keep bolstering that tally. And he's doing other things as well, like Joao Pedro won 2 penalties, I think it was, for Cole Palmer the other day, didn't he? Joao Pedro won 2 penalties, and that's not the kind of thing that you get on here. You know what I mean? You don't see those stats really well reflected in how much Joao Pedro affected a game. So yeah, that's it, guys. I just thought this was an interesting comparison to do, and I'd love to know what you think. Nice one, guys. Thank you very much for sticking around until the end of the video if you did. I hope you're all having an absolutely wicked day. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I forgot my call to action. Give us a little like and share it to your mates and see what they think as well. Nice one, guys. Take it easy. Peace.